Hello and welcome to Business 360. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines that we're tracking for you this evening. The Sensex and the Nifty end flat after a range-bound session. Equity mutual fund inflows declined 14% in November. Even a small and mid-cap fund see healthy flows. SIP numbers hold steady. Brokerages expect the transition from Shaktikanta to Sanjay Malohtra to be smooth and seamless, says the market will move to a price in a rate cut during the February Monetary Policy Committee meeting. The rupee hits a new all-time low in anticipation that the new governor could shift towards a more accommodative monetary policy stance.
The relationship between the government, in the finance ministry in particular, and the Reserve Bank of India, I think they have been at their best. We had excellent cooperation, excellent coordination.
RBI Governor Shaktikanta bids farewell after 6 years at the helm, says the relationship between the bank and the government have been at its best during his tenure. Ad supervisory methods have become much sharper today. RBI allows the Burman family to hike stake in Religare Enterprises from 25 to 51% through an open offer, but lays down certain conditions. The company cannot appoint new directors at this stage, and Burmans need to submit a detailed consolidation plan within 90 days. Israel pounds Syria's capital Damascus, targeting airports and strategic military infrastructure. Syrian security officials say Israeli military incursion has reached the outskirts of Damascus. Iran, Qatar and Saudi Arabia accuse Israel of a dangerous land grab after it seized a buffer zone in Syria. Parliament logjam continues. Both houses adjourned for the day. Opposition lawmakers move a no-confidence motion against Rajya Sabha Chairman Jagdeep Dhankhar. Marks the first such instance in India's parliamentary history. However, the motion is expected to be defeated as opposition does not have the required numbers. The Supreme Court takes note of the controversial comments made by Allahabad High Court Judge Shekhar Kumar Yadav at a VHP event. All India Lawyers Union had called for action against the judge for using a communal slur and saying India will be run as per the wishes of the majority community. Well, let's start with the market action of the day. The Sensex and the Nifty ended the day flat after a range-bound session. Both indices are largely unchanged when compared to yesterday. That's the Nifty for you. The Sensex just about in the green. The Nifty bank higher by about 170 points and the mid-cap index added 136 points. Now, inflows into equity mutual funds dropped by more than 14% in November. Large-cap funds were, in fact, the worst hit, with the AMPI data showing an over 26% dip. Surabhi is standing by now to take us through the numbers for the month. Surabhi.
Well, Shireen, the numbers actually are showing that slight dip, but they're not bad. I mean, the net equity inflow picture is still quite healthy at just under 36,000 crores. But yes, I mean, it's looking a shade lower than the near 42,000 crores that equity funds pulled in October. So why the dip? Actually, before I talk about the reason, let's talk about the all-important SIP number. Now, that's still a very lofty 25,300 odd crores. But again, it's very flat. Month on month, there's no growth in SIPs. That's something that you have to keep in mind. So why the dip? The primary reason is that in the month of November, we didn't have hectic NFO activity, as has been the case in the last couple of months, which is why NFOs actually mopped up just about 4,000 crores compared to the 10,000, 12,000, 15,000 crores of these big ticket fund offerings, new fund offerings. They were pulling in the big money in the earlier part of this year. That also explains why thematic funds, if you talk about sectoral and thematic funds, which is how the mutual fund industry is pulling in a lot of the new money, that category has seen a dip as well compared to the trends that we've seen in the earlier part of the year. But the good news is that investors are very well keeping the faith in small caps and mid caps. While the large cap category has seen the net inflows drop by about 1,000 crores. Again, this is month on month comparison. Look at mid caps and small caps. Small cap funds have pulled in over 4,100 crores. That's not a small sum of money. Mid cap funds are now pulling in almost 5,000 crores on a monthly basis. So the mid and small cap party is well and truly on. Also explains the recovery in those indices in the last couple of weeks. On the hybrid side, interestingly, flows have thinned out as well. And here there are very popular categories like the multi-asset funds or the balanced advantage funds. But there's been a bit of a dip. They haven't pulled in as much money in November as what we saw in the recent past. Finally, you talk about the total industry AUM that has swollen further. And now it stands at above 68 lakh crore rupees. So looking good, not too bad. But yes, there has been a bit of a short-term dip, a month-on-month dip in those numbers.
All right, so many thanks for joining us. From the mutual fund data now to the money market action. The rupee hitting a fresh record low against the dollar today. It surpassed its previous low of 84.75 that was hit last week. Now, this after the appointment of a new RBI governor, Sanjay Malohtra, increased expectations of a possible rate cut next year. Brokerage firm Nomura said that a likely shift towards an accommodative monetary policy stance is among the potential changes that are anticipated under the new governor. And speaking of the new governor, the new governor, Sanjay Malohtra, is set to take charge at the Reserve Bank. A 1990 IS officer from the Rajasthan cadre, Malohtra served as the Financial Services Secretary before his stint as the Revenue Secretary from December 2022. In fact, visuals of Sanjay Malohtra, Revenue Secretary, exiting North Block as Revenue Secretary one last time, and of course will be heading to the Reserve Bank of India. That is Sanjay Malohtra, the Revenue Secretary, leaving his perch at North Block. Brokerage firms expect the transition from the RBI Governor Shaktikanta to Malohtra to be smooth and seamless. They also expect strong coordination between the fiscal and monetary policy. The appointment of Sanjay Malohtra has also revived hopes that the RBI MPC may vote for a repo rate cut in February. Ritu's here with what brokerages make of Sanjay Malhotra's appointment. Ritu.
Well, with the Reserve Bank of India gearing up for a leadership change after 6 years, as Sanjay Malhotra steps into the role of the governor, markets are weighing the impact of his appointment on the monetary policy and the economy. So Macquarie expects his tenure to focus on balancing growth concerns and stabilizing the rupee. They will closely watch his approach to the regulatory framework, which toughened significantly under Shaktikanta Das. Barclays sees a seamless transition, anticipating continuity when it comes to fiscal monetary coordination and a practical approach from Sanjay Malhotra. They foresee the MPC starting rate cuts from February and do not expect any radical policy shifts. Citi echoes the sentiment, predicting policy continuity in the near term. The focus will remain on balancing growth and inflation, and they also foresee a 25 basis point rate cut in February. Bank of America highlights the tricky period Malhotra is stepping into. They believe his recent silence on key economic issues leaves his policy stance unclear, but the probability of inter-meeting rate cuts has now diminished. Nomura says Malhotra's appointment as another finance ministry insider is going to be welcomed by the markets, and they predict a path for more urgent easing. MK adds that bankers view Malhotra as a straightforward communicator. His push for tech adoption in banking and recent taxation decisions signal a pragmatic approach. To sum up, all eyes are now going to be on the February MPC meeting to gauge the new governor's policy priorities. But for now, the street seems optimistic about continuity and continues to expect the first rate cut of the cycle come February.
Ritu, many thanks. And outgoing Reserve Bank Governor Shaktikanta Das has bid farewell after 6 years at the helm. In his last press conference as governor, Das said the relationship between the central bank and the government has been at its best during his tenure, and issues between the two have been resolved internally. When asked about government officials taking charge at the central bank, Das said he's confident that governors will prioritize the need of the wider economy.
The relationship between the government, in the finance ministry in particular, and the Reserve Bank of India, I think they have been at their best. We had excellent cooperation, excellent coordination before COVID, during COVID, after COVID, the multiple challenges which we faced when the inflation spiked following the commencement of the war in Ukraine. The government undertook a lot of supply side measures. Perspectives of finance ministry or the central bank can differ at times. It happens world over. But in my tenure, I think we have been able to resolve all such issues through internal discussions. I would like to state emphatically that when a governor comes, he looks at the wider economy. He looks at things, yes, definitely from the Reserve Bank's perspective and from the point of view of what is the mandate given to Reserve Bank and how he is going to fulfill that mandate. But while fulfilling that mandate, I can say with confidence and certainty, in the past, present if I can say, till today evening, and in the future, the governors keep in mind the requirement of the wider economy also.
I would like to acknowledge all that Governor Das has done over many years, holding things steady right through COVID and the turmoil that we've seen in the last couple of years. I think Governor Malohtra brings a wealth of experience And I will just put it in context. I think this is the first governor that we would have who would have had experience leading a financial institution, who has experience leading the Department of Financial Services, then leading the revenue function in the country. And I would expect the same sort of steady hand going ahead from the governor. So everybody looks at the longer picture. The longer picture is a growth story that I don't think we have ever experienced before.
I think the governor, Mr. Das, has done a tremendous job in his role as the governor. He was there for 6 years through some of the most challenging times, whether it was the pandemic, it was the crisis of the two wars in the world going on, as well as so much of he's improved the health of NBFCs and banks. And I'm sure that we are awaiting the new governor, Mr. Malohtra, has a stellar track record. He's worked across the different departments of the ministry, so his experience is good.
Well, reactions there coming into the change of guard at the Reserve Bank. And speaking of the Reserve Bank, shares of Religare Enterprises up in trade today and briefly, in fact, hit a 52-week high. This after the Reserve Bank of India approved Burman family's plans to raise their stake in the company from 25% to 51% through an open offer. The RBI's approval came with a condition that the NBFCs are consolidated within the Burman Group by the 31st of March 2026. This development marks a major step towards resolving control disputes between Rashmi Saluja-led Religare and the Burman family of Dabur, India. Here's the action from the commodity space. Oil prices slipping as concerns eased after the fallout from Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's overthrow. However, China's vow to ramp up policy stimulus, which could boost the top global crude buyers' demand, have kept the losses in check. So that's the latest as far as the oil markets are concerned. Now, tensions in Syria continue to rise after Israel carried out airstrikes across the country, including the capital city of Damascus. Forces have targeted 3 major airports and other strategic military infrastructure across Syria. Israeli forces also managed to seize areas including Mount Hermon and surrounding villages in southern Syria, claiming its presence in the territory. Iran, Qatar and Saudi Arabia accused Israel of a dangerous land grab, but Israel defended its action, calling it a defensive move. Meanwhile, the rebel group leader in Syria has vowed to publish a list of former government officials that were involved in human rights violations, including torture and unlawful detention. The leaders also vowed to pursue war criminals and hold them accountable for their actions. Countries like Germany and France have also appreciated the departure of the al-Assad government in Syria. Both French and German officials have said they are ready to work with the new regime in Syria. This as the US has pledged humanitarian aid to Syria for relief work. And staying with tensions in West Asia, Israeli forces continue to deepen its offensive in Gaza. Dozens of Palestinians, including women and children, were killed in attacks in the last 24 hours. The attacks also caused a power outage at a hospital in the northern part of the enclave, threatening the lives of more than 100 patients. Reports suggest that an Israeli drone has also attacked a refugee camp in northern Gaza, killing 3 people. And speaking of Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is set to take the witness stand and testify for the first time in a bribery trial. Netanyahu was indicted in 2019 on the charges of bribery, fraud and breach of trust. The Israeli Prime Minister has denied any wrongdoing and has claimed to be a victim of a political witch hunt. Revenues of global airline companies expected to exceed $1 trillion for the first time in 2025. However, as per International Air Transport Association, that's IATA, profitability remains wafer thin, while airfares in 2025 will be lower than those in 2024. Madiha is standing by to take us through the details. Madiha, so an optimistic scenario being painted there by IATA as far as global air travel is concerned, but profitability wafer thin.
Exactly. So the outlook looks both bullish as well as bearish. And I'll tell you why. Global airline industry revenues are expected to cross $1 trillion, and that is for the first time ever. And that's 4.4% up than what it was in 2024. But airlines' profitability, as you also mentioned, remains quite low. IATA is expecting profits of all airlines to touch $36.6 billion as compared to $31.5 billion in 2024. Now, here's a number that gives a better perspective on what the profitability is going to be. Average net profit per passenger is expected at $7, which is up from $6.4 in 2024. So it's a very marginal increase. but it is lower than $7.9, as I was mentioning, in 2023. And Middle East carriers are most likely to be the strongest in terms of profitability, to see a collective net profit of 8.2%. Now, since airlines continue to grapple with supply chain issues, they're spending more on aircraft leasing and maintenance, and that is expected to push expenses by 4% as per IATA's outlook, which means airlines will be spending $940 billion in 2025. Then, as more people travel by air, which is also the trend seen in India, the global passenger traffic is expected to reach 5.2 billion in 2025, and that is up by 6.7% from 2024. And which is exactly why 2025 will see more flight departures. IATA's forecast says 40 million flights will depart in 2025, which is up 4.6% from 2024. And given the demand versus supply gap, these flights will continue to see a load factor or occupancy of 83.4%, which is almost the same that was in 2024. Now, cargo volumes are expected to reach 72.5 million tons, an increase of 5.8% from 2024. Now, while airlines walk on a tightrope, it is going to be a good year for passengers. I'll tell you why. Because according to IATA, the average airfare in 2025 is expected at $380, which is 1.8% lower than 2024. So that is the outlook for 2025 by IATA.
All right, a minor relief there coming in as far as prices are concerned for consumers. That's the estimate and the expectation. Many thanks, Madhya, for joining us. We will head into a break, but up next, the Supreme Court takes note of the controversial comments made by the Allahabad High Court Judge Shekhar Kumar Yadav at a VHP event. That and more when we return. Well, the big national story, opposition lawmakers have moved the no-confidence motion against Vice President and Rajya Sabha Chairman Jagdeep Dhankhar. The opposition MP cited Dhankhar's alleged partisan approach in managing the House proceedings. This marks the first such instance in India's parliamentary history. However, the motion is expected to be defeated as the opposition does not have the numbers. Both houses of parliament were adjourned for the day amidst disruptions. Congress leaders Rahul Gandhi and Priyanka Gandhi Vadra led the opposition's protest march against the government over the Adani issue inside the parliament premises. The Supreme Court has taken cognizance of the controversial statements made by the Allahabad High Court Judge Shekhar Kumar Yadav at a VHP event. All India Lawyers Union had called for action against the judge for using a communal slur and saying that India will run, and I quote, as per the wishes of the majority community. Ashmit joins us now with the details. Ashmit, the Supreme Court now taking cognizance of the comments coming in from the Allahabad High Court judge. What about the Bar Association?
Well, these comments that came from Justice Yadav, which incidentally happened within the High Court Bar's Library Hall of the Allahabad High Court, which some point out make it aggravate the entire issue, aggravate the comments that he's made, has been criticized by a whole host of stakeholders, not just various stakeholders, various lawyers, but even the Bar Association, Supreme Court Bar Association. President Kapil Sibal has called for his impeachment, in fact, not stopping at that, and saying that it is now called upon the likes of the Prime Minister, the Home Minister, and even the government MPs to come forth and support this call for his impeachment, that the government cannot be seen siding with such a communal discriminatory judge. Not just that, Owaisi, a sitting Lok Sabha MP, has also made a call for his removal, Justice Yadav's removal, saying that how can a minority community member go ahead and seek justice from a judge who has made comments along these lines. In fact, to that end, important to point out that the Supreme Court has also taken note of these media reports. The Supreme Court has said that it has sought details from the Allahabad High Court as to what exactly transpired, the nature of comments that were made by Justice Yadav. And to that end, the Supreme Court statement pointing out that this issue is under consideration. And not just that, there was also a complaint filed before the Apex Court by the CJAR. This is an NGO which essentially claims that Justice Yadav's comments have brought shame to the judiciary, that they are communal in nature, they are discriminatory in nature, and that at the very least, the Supreme Court should institute an inquiry and should withdraw all judicial work from Justice Yadav during the pendency of that inquiry.
All right, Ashmit, appreciate you joining us. Now, former External Affairs Minister S.M. Krishna passed away at the age of 92 after a prolonged illness. He's been credited for the transformation of Bengaluru into an IT hub during his tenure as Karnataka Chief Minister from 1999 to 2004. He also served as the Governor of Maharashtra for 4 years. Earlier this year, Krishna was awarded India's second highest civilian award, the Padma Vibhushan, in recognition of his 6-decade-long political career. Krishna joined the BJP in 2017 after a 46-year association with the Congress Party. And with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of Business 360. But before we go, let me present to you the Growth Code, a collaborative initiative by Grow and CNBC-TV18. Our mission is to equip you with valuable insights and strategies to navigate the markets and make informed investment decisions. Today, we will help you understand the hidden risks of cheap options and how to avoid over-leveraging.
Let me tell you about the hidden risks of cheap options. Avoid over-leveraging. Now, these cheap options may seem like an opportunity, but they can quickly become a trap. Now, here's how. When the options are inexpensive, they're tempting to buy too many contracts. And in that, you take up more risk than you realize, and you end up over-leveraging. For instance, if you're trading a 10 rupee out of the money option, you might buy or sell 100 contracts, thinking it's just a small investment. But if these options expire worthless, you've lost 1,000 rupees. And if they expire in the money, you are losing money on those 100 contracts that you've actually sold. Now imagine doing this repeatedly. These losses add up very fast. Additionally, cheap options face rapid time decay as well. As expiration nears, their value erodes unless the stock moves significantly in your favor, which is a rare occurrence when you're buying out of money options, and quite a possibility when you're selling those out-of-money options as well. So what you need to focus on is risk management. Buy fewer contracts, the amount that you can afford, and prioritize at the money or in the money options with higher chances of success on the long side.